Hey guys, and welcome to the Dowie Vengeance video, or should I say, the Vengeance of the Wood Elves. So me and the mighty Samurai Warrior are going to be going head to head here on Pillar of Bone, and this is a rematch of a showdown that we did a couple of videos ago, and that video I basically explained that I thought this was the worst matchup in the game for the Wood Elves, and a lot of people had a lot of opinions on that, on if I was correct, if I was wrong, and the different playstyles and the like. So basically, me and Samurai Warrior got talking about it, and ended up basically doing this matchup 4 or 5 times, and up to this point, the Dowie had been victorious every single time. So basically, I was bringing the exact same identical build, and we were experimenting with the Wood Elf force, and just seeing what we think was the best counter to the forces of the Dowie. So did we come up with a counter? Did we not? Let's hop in here and find out. So for our main forces, it's as pretty similar to the previous video that you would have seen. I was trying to remember it from memory, but basically Longbeards in the front line with some warriors at Dragonfire Pass, as well as a load of miners to back up the flanks, as well as that front line, so they can ensure they get all those blasts and charges up and over into the front line, doing pretty good consistent damage. We also have a couple of units of Quarrelers and a couple of units of Rangers to counter fire the enemy where possible. Hidden in the trees, we do have triple Slayers, one of which is the Dragonback Slayers, a regiment of renown who can slow down the enemy, and these guys pretty pivotal in this matchup. Yes, they're lightly armoured, so can be picked away from archer fire, but overall they can take down some of the big, larger monsters, heroes, characters, all that kind of good stuff. As for artillery, we do have an organ gun, which is taking some long shots already from the arrows of Kurnos of the Waystalker, as well as a cannon as well for long-range firepower, and for our lordship, we are coming in with Grom Brindle. Now, I certainly think he's the best Dwarf Lord in this matchup, or he's very good at it at least. Comes in with Flash Bomb to slow enemies, Foe Seeker, Grom Brindle has no fear. We did try the Regiment of Renowned Stag Knights as well, the ethereal ones, to see how they'd fare in this matchup, because of course they do magic damage, but they can take all the blasting charges and a lot of the ranged firepower for free, but Grom Brindle just smoke bombs them and destroys them incredibly quickly. Now, for the forces of the Wood Elves, this time we are going to see triple Waywatchers, which is a Wood Elf classic over on this right-hand flank, picking off that organ gun before it can get any value. For the main battle line, we actually have Glade Guard spam, which is the best way to go, I think, all with Starfire Shafts, but one who comes in with that poison. So these guys can do some decent long-range damage, and many people may not know, but Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts no longer do magic damage. They do fire damage, but they're there for that armor piercing, and without the magic damage, they're much better against the Dwarfs. We do have 3 Eternal Guard as well, so a very thin front line. We're going to be looking to try and kite the Dwarfs as much as possible and outshoot them. These guys are there to do, fill the gaps where needed, and kind of be sacrificed into blasts and charges and the like. We also have a Spell Slinger here, who is the focus of our cannon fire today. There's not many other good targets. And we also have a Waystalker as well, good for taking out artillery pieces. Over on the left-hand side, we do have a Glade Lord, and I'm assuming this is the Glade Lady, so we get another Arrows of Kurnos, and she's going to be on the Great Stag Mount, which is an absolutely beautiful looking mount. Really excited to see this thing in action a little bit more. So she's darting down the left-hand flank. We also have some Great Stag Knights here. Now, they're pretty lightly armoured, and pretty big targets, but they have huge shock damage. So if they can get in there, they can do some pretty decent work. And over on the other side, we have some Glade Riders with spears. Without further ado, let's get this battle underway. So the Waystalker's instantly getting some good value, taking out the organ gun here, which is already down to 1 artillery piece, and isn't going to last too long. So we are pushing forward and starting to counterfire a little bit with the Rangers and Bugman, not Rangers, Bugman Rangers, just Rangers and Quarrelers, there we go. The nice little combo, doing some decent damage to the Waywatchers and pushing them back. And we are going to be forced to advance here, so I kind of want to sit back and protect my cannon, but there's no real fantastic targets. If we sit back, we're simply going to get picked apart. So I'm trying to put some pressure on the enemy, but that does leave the cannon a little bit vulnerable. So I'm going to be pulling back the Dragonback Slayers for a little bit of protection there. And we're slowly going to be advanced. Now, Longbeards and Dwarf Warriors and the like will be taking the initial shots from the front, which isn't going to do, a crazy amount of damage, but still it will all add up over the course of the battle. And these Waywatchers as well are going to be getting some fantastic value when their volleys don't just go into no man's land here, trying to take down our range tools and really gain some map control. And they're very good at doing that all round. In the back lines, we do have our Slayers chasing off some Great Stag Knights, but their added mobility coming in with a pretty impressive 90 speed. They're going to be able to wrap up and around and hunt down this cannon. But at this point, the cannon, again, isn't going to be able to get fantastic value, to be honest. But I'm going to be trying to fall back to protect it where possible. Rangers and Quarrelers are going to turn to fire, as the Dragonback Slayers do come in to try and pin in the Great Stag Knights. But you can see, really decent shock charge is going to make that cannon crew waver a little bit there, but still not take down any artillery pieces and just just do a bit of HP damage, and in return the Great Stag Knights are taking a little bit of damage in return. Dragonback Slayers do manage to catch them and pop that flammable effect and slow, but they're very, very fast here, so still taking arrows to the back isn't going to be a too happy time for them. In the front line, we are trying to push up with miners with blasting charges where possible. I want to use the blasting charges before we're kind of out of dwarfs, and as you can see, my opponent is going to be focused firing them down where possible. He doesn't want any of those blasting charges getting value whatsoever. He can always leave the long beards to the last second grind. Great Stag Knights are going to come in here to help support the Waystalker, who has been surrounded by miners, and with all these units pinned, we can see a horrendous kind of cloud of arrows coming towards our lovely miners here, and they're getting picked apart without making too much value either. So far, so good for the skirmish force of the Wood Elves, and we can see the Glade Riders managed to nip in as well, force off the Organ Gun crew once more, but took pretty substantial damage throughout. And Glade Riders are a very good unit, but in this matchup, they do take damage from pretty much everything in the Dwarf roster quite heavily. We are having an Earthblood come down on the Great Stag Knights, who have taken considerable damage. Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, lifting those flaming axes and driving them off away from the battlefield. But as you can see, the Wood Elf Firebase has been split up into several different sections, making it really hard to slow push. No matter which way you advance, you are going to be taking shots to the rear and to the flanks, and it's kind of hard to, negotiate this dwarf force. And as you can see, we're having quite a lot of trouble figuring out which direction to go and trying to hop on the correct targets, which is down to good play as well to Samurai Warrior. Great Stag Knights bouncing back and forth, so we are trying to pull our Slayers back once more for a little bit of backline protection. Now we have got to grips with the Eternal Guard, with the arrows of Konos coming to the rear of Grom Brindle, doing some pretty decent damage to boot as well, while dropping a Flash Bomb just to help clear these Eternal Guard up as quickly as possible. Warriors Dragonfire Pass certainly going to put those guys in a dumpster relatively quickly. Waystalkers do waste some ammunition there into some pretty beat up miners, but apart from that, it's been a good target priority from them, focusing down the Quarrelers, who have got a little bit close to the front line, who themselves are now going to have to fall back to some pressure from some Eternal Guard. So Longbeard's going to be stepping in there to intercept. Balance power is currently against us, but at this point it's a bit of a waiting game from the Dwarfs. Can we sustain our forces through this sheer amount of bow fire? When the ammunition does run dry for the Wood Elves, there's not really anything here that's that great in combat, bar, the Stag Knights and the Eternal Guard are okay, but they're not going to be able to stand up to Longbeards, Grom Brindle and the like. In the back lines, you can see the good and nimble Wood Elf cavalry just swooping in and helping clear up some weakened miners with blasting charges, trying to get that value where possible. However, all our Slayers are incredibly healthy and online, it seems. Looks like we do actually have a unit in the far distance as well on the minimap. It's just the ongoing crew that is going to be retreating here, so nothing to write home about at all. Great Stag Knights here are dangerously getting pretty danger close there to the Slayers and the like, but once again, some expert timing are going to be able to pull back that range units, and you can see the Waywatchers are now focusing down at the Rangers, realising they still are one of the biggest threats. Looks like they are going to be broken. Miners finally throwing some of those precious blasting charges, not too many, into the Eternal Guard, which is going to allow the Warriors Dragonfire Pass here to fight pretty successfully up against them. Now, the Glade Lady on the Great Stag does swoop in here, but as you can see, she's been pinned in by the Quarrelers. Some big antler strikes trying to fling them away and allow her to escape a little bit longer, but the Slayers have gotten here as well, doing some pretty nice damage, and if we can just about pin her in for a little while longer, we may be able to claw our way back into this game. Spell Song of Life has also been caught as well by Dragonback Slayers, where she's doing some awesome attack animations, flinging one of those Slayers up into the air and crashing them back down. She does not want to be surrounded by Dragonback Slayers, and Blade Lady's really struggling to escape as well. Stag Knights do come in for a glorious charge, although they do get smoke bombed and take a considerable amount of damage as well. Grom Brindle is getting pretty low at this point. Waywatchers using up the remainder of their ammunition to try and snipe out the stout Dwarf Lord. But there's still some corners active as well, and as you can see, most of the Wood Elves are pretty low on ammunition or completely dry on ammunition. Dragonback Slayer is going to finish off the Spell Stone of Life here, which is all good news for us. No more healing on those pesky Stags and Glade Lady. And unfortunately, she's really struggling to escape and has decided that she's just going to stand and fight at this point. Slayer's doing a pretty decent job on her as well. Of course, anti-large, Great Stag, it makes sense. Crawlers holding firm as well and trying to counter-shoot the Glade Guard, which have ammunition left, really trying to neuter the effectiveness of that range. And all the Way Watchers are out of ammunition but the one unit, although huge kills across the board. Be interesting to see how much value they got. And we've managed to drag the balance power back to the middle now. As the Glade Lady is being completely swarmed and hacked to pieces, there's not much hope for escape for her, although the Great Stag Knights are going to get a glorious charge in here on top of the Quarrelers, while all the Slayers are distracted trying to kill that lady. It looks like the White Dwarf did go down as well to maybe the last volleys of the Way Watchers, but at the same time, balance power is just a tiny bit against us, but nothing too crazy. And you can see some Longbeards are fighting back to back up against Glade Guard as well as Glade Riders, trying desperately to hold the line. It's still 60 models on those guys, so if I can pull my Slayers over to the Longbeards and make a final stand, we definitely have a fantastic shout here, because a lot of the infantry that is left is Glade Guard, and they don't really want to fight in combat too much, especially up against someone as mighty as the Dowie. Great Stag Knights down to 9 models now, and only 1000 HP, are really suffering, but through some good healing as well, they've certainly got some good value and shock damage up to 44 kills here. And the Longbeards currently holding firm. I'm desperately trying to pull my Slayers over, but there's so many filthy Elves in the way, it's kind of hard to get to grips with them. Way Watchers aren't the worst melee combatants all round. Of course, they don't want to go up against Slayers, but they can do some pretty decent damage. As you can see, we have 43 here, 18 here, and 13 here, so we are starting to run out of troops. And our Longbeards just about holding the line desperately. They have got 2 chevrons on them, up to 39 kills, and they're trying to do a pretty impossible task here, surrounded by so many filthy Elves. They are swinging those mighty axes and hefting those huge shields up for protection, doing a pretty decent job. But as you can see, Way Watchers coming in with those twin blades, doing some Legolas work and cutting down Elves wherever they see them. Though the Slayers are here as well, doing some pretty decent work, going out in glorious fashion. There is blood and dead Dwarfs and Elves littering the battlefield, and in come the Great Stag Knights once more. And this is some fantastic play from Samurai Warrior, taking these beat up Knights, only 8 of them, they don't have too much staying power left, and cycle charging down the Longbeards, trying to break their leadership, and he has done so successfully. With the Longbeards gone, the Slayers simply won't have enough punch left, I don't think, to bring down the Waystalk, who's kind of leading the resurgence of Wood Elves here to bring it down the Elves. It looks like we do have a tiny amount of ammunition left as well coming in, which is pretty key because it is poison ammunition here, lowering the stats of all these troops. And it looks like these Slayers are going to fall to the last man, but an incredibly close fought game with no ammunition left whatsoever, and barely any Wood Elves or Dwarfs left on the field. But looks like we literally just have the last few Slayers fighting here. I can't remember if we go all the way to the death, but we can see some glorious animations as they do drag down another Great Stag Knight in some glorious death blows here as well. But down the mighty Dowie go. Looks like there is just one left standing, and with a final death blow, it is going to be a valiant defeat for the forces of the Dowie. Very well played to the mighty Samurai Warrior, a fantastic YouTuber himself. You'll see a link to his channel down below in the description. It is an Italian channel, so if any of you guys do want to learn Italian or do indeed speak Italian, then feel free to hop over there and check out his good stuff. And this was, I think, our 5th Dowie game, maybe, with all the previous tests and the game we did the other week, or 4th or 5th game, and this is the best solution we found personally to the Wood Elf Dowie matchup, and it is you have to outshoot them and play incredibly well at the same time. So before doing the analysis, if you guys did enjoy, feel free to give the video a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content. And if you guys want to send in replays and just join a generally cool community, get involved in tournaments and the like, feel free to join my Discord. There is a link in the description down below, as well as links to how you can support the channel and fuel my hot chocolate addiction. Anyway, back to the analysis. So overall, I think Samurai Warrior played quite a lot better than me regardless. I didn't really know what to do too much up against such a build, rather than just try and, get the archers to shoot the least valuable targets, was kind of the only play we could do with the dwarfs here. And of course, this isn't necessarily a dwarf build you're going to see every time, but it is some pretty standard stuff. A lot of cheap troops, loads of slayers, and some long range as well, which tends to trade cost effectively. But as you can see across the board, nothing really manages to get any value, apart from the Longbeards, of course, and the slayers, who do some pretty decent work. In particular, the Dragonback slayers, over 2,000 damage damage value and nearly 9,500 damage dealt is pretty impressive stuff. But of course, the Weight Watchers also had a pretty good time of it, managing to neuter the effectiveness of our artillery pieces. You can see pretty good damage value across the board, but they are expensive at the same time, and they use up all their ammunition, but they all managed to gain some chevrons, which is some glorious stuff. Great Stag Knights, of course, did not make back their value, but that shock damage really helps out, as well as breaking off dwarf units, which are kind of lurking in the wings and the like. Tiny misplay with the Glade Lady, getting her and the Spell Singer caught up amongst the Slayers. Apart from that, a very, very well played game to the Wood Elves. However, having to use so much ammunition to grind out this game, and if you make 1 or 2 mistakes, it could be game over. I think it was rather Wood Elf favoured, but as soon as the Glade Lady just gets caught up a tiny bit too long, slowed down by the Slayers and kind of dragged down, all of a sudden the game is open again. I think if those Longbeards had managed to hold and had got the Slayers on top of them, there's a good shout we could have ground down the game. So right guys, what do you think of this matchup? Do you still think it's impossible? Do you think it is possible? Do you have any other ideas? And I should mention actually, we did try out the Blade Singer approach that I mentioned on the last video, where you get a Branch Wraith with Dampen effect from her item, and you get the Blade Singers to try and carve through the Dwarfs very, very quickly and negate, some of the magic damage they do indeed do. And it didn't really work, unfortunately, which was, a bit of a shame. I'm sure we need to do a bit more experimentation. Perhaps it can still be pulled through. And even if you make them invisible and you get right up close to the enemy, what tended to happen is they would meet that Longbeard wall, or Dwarf Warrior wall even, and then the Crawlers and Rangers would just have an absolute field day targeting them down. But perhaps if you can combine some backline pressure to buy them the time to cut through the front line, perhaps there is hope with that strategy yet. Anyway guys, until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.